There's been some changes in the Bahamas that some of you are probably aware of, others perhaps not. It's been kind of a moving target over the past couple weeks since this was announced, but they did take effect July 1, so I wanted to go over what the changes were. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of videos like this online, and I thought, well, why not kind of chime in with my perspective on it in case it helps anybody. So this is from the Bahamas Marina Association, and let's kind of go over the basics here. So again, this took effect on July 1st, and it impacts boaters coming in. So the first thing to note here is there's no longer a short-term cruising permit. There's only a 12-month cruising permit. Vessels 50 feet and under are $500 for 12 months. 50 to 99 is $1,000, and then over 100 is $3,000. Now, the thing that you need to know about here is that re-entry, as you can see down here, entrance into the Bahamas twice within a 30-day period. There's a lot of confusion about that, and I'm not sure I have the definitive answer either. It seems from the community that the kind of the general understanding of this is that it's within the first 30-day period. So you can come and go twice within that first 30 days. And if that's in fact what they enforce, and it's going to have some meaningful impacts on folks that are passing through the Bahamas to go to the rest of the Caribbean, for example, because you will not be returning for hurricane season back through the Bahamas within that first 30 days. So if that's the way they enforce this, then that means you'll have to buy a second cruising permit when you come back through, or basically just have to fly the yellow flag, not stop anywhere. There's kind of a lot of discussion about what the impact there is also, because the second part of this is there's an anchoring fee now. Your old permit, you had two options, a 90-day permit and a 1-year permit. Most folks probably took the 1 year if they were down there for a long time. We did the 90-day when we were down there, so we were cruising around for just under 3 months, and then we headed out. There was no anchoring fee requirement to pay, and the fishing license was bundled in. So our entire cost for bringing the boat into the Bahamas for those 3 months was $300. Now, as you can see here, temporary fishing permits for pleasure vessels. This is a monthly charge. So you have to pay a $100 fishing permit for every month that you're in there, and there's not a lot of details about how that gets enforced. There is a link here that's for online that says it can be renewed through that link. Hopefully that works, because otherwise you got to go back to a port of entry and refresh or renew your fishing license. Not real practical. And if you're there for the entire year, it's $1,200 to fish, and that includes lobstering and conching. Okay, so again, we went from, in our case, $300 for a vessel under 50 feet. I guess the cutoff was 35 feet or bigger at that point, with no anchoring and no additional cost for fishing. That was bundled in. Okay, I haven't seen it yet. It's probably down here. Here we go. Anchorage fees. Let's just pop to this. So for vessels under 50 feet, you've got to pay a $200 anchoring permit. 50 to 99, it's $350, and then $1,500 for 100 or more. What I'm hearing is that even though you may have reservations in a marina or intend to stay on a mooring ball, they are charging the $200. So if you show up now on a boat our size, 42 feet, and you check in, you're being charged $700 right off the bat. Not sure how that's going to go in the future, if that's going to be clarified or changed on the system, but that's the way it's working now. There's also an AIS requirement with a $1,000 penalty if you do not have an AIS that is operating, as I understand it, at all times for boats over 50 feet. So that probably doesn't impact a lot of cruisers, but it's there as part of this. So my opinion on this is it seems fairly punitive. And it's interesting reading sort of the comments on Facebook, about how the Bahamians are viewing this. It seems to be overly targeting the subsistence cruisers. The folks that are there for longer term, they're fishing for their own consumption. But it's harsh, right? So I caught no fish down there fishing during our stay. I speared some lionfish, which I'm not sure how that fits into this either. They want you to remove lionfish from the environment, but are you required to have a fishing permit to do that? I think that's kind of counterproductive for the Bahamians. I caught maybe 8 or 10 conch over those 3 months. I speared 1 lobster. So, a $300 fishing license for that period would have covered 1 lobster and some speared lionfish and a handful of conch. That becomes just prohibitively expensive. It just doesn't make sense, right? So perhaps they're trying to drive people in to purchase seafood from local fishermen. I saw one post where the guy said, listen, go to our restaurants or buy from our stores, but if you want to have the enjoyment or the hobby of fishing, you got to pay. Now, I think the argument that this is to, positively impact the environment of the fish stocks is a little nonsensical. If you go to the Bahamas on an airplane, you're allowed to fish from the shore, as I understand it, without a fishing permit. You're allowed to rent a boat from a Bahamian and fish without a fishing permit, and you're allowed to go out fishing with Bahamians without a fishing permit. And my other beef with this is that as a sustenance cruiser, right, so we're just down there sort of, my wife and I, cruising along, taking things as we see. Yeah, we're enjoying it as a hobby, but we're also trying to catch the occasional odd fish to eat, right? The problem with that is that you're imposing these fees on that. They're the same fees that you're charging a 35-foot, 40-foot center console who's bringing guests over from, Fort Lauderdale, and maybe they're catching 50 fish, and I'm catching 5. So again, if this is about sort of the maintaining the food stocks or environmental aspects, it seems like it's harshly impacting the live-aboard cruiser, and less so the professional fisherman who's coming over there, for a weekend trip or something like that. So that's, those are my concerns, and this is why we're considering going somewhere else like the Yucatan next time we head off for an adventure. So, again, for our situation, it's more than doubled the cost of the cruising permit. So instead of $300 all in, it's $500 plus a $200 anchoring fee plus $100 a month if I want to fish. The 2 entries within 30 days, if that's the first 30 days, then what's the point of having a 1-year cruising permit? A lot of us will go down there after the holidays. We got to be back for hurricane season, so maybe you're down there 4 or 5 months, and then you're past your 30 days. Next time you go in, let's say you want to go early in October because you're trying to max out that 1-year permit, you might have to pay again anyway. It obviously impacts people en route to the Caribbean. It'll be interesting to see how this gets sorted out. I would be inclined to cruising permit and leisurely work my way through the Bahamas. Again, the fishing is a disincentive for that. But if I'm going to pay that money and I don't get to use that permit coming back up from the islands, that's kind of tough. So we'll see how all this sorts out, but I think those are the things to keep in mind. And I think that we'll see. We're getting the folks that are like boycott the Bahamas and all that, and that's fine. And certainly the Bahamas can do whatever they want, right? It's their country. But it's just what they're proposing just is simply not competitive, right? So you can go to Mexico and get a 10-year cruising permit for about $60, as I understand it, and the fishing appears to be $72 for the year. So there you go. I think what's probably going to happen is they're going to lose a lot of business. I think it's going to negatively impact the out islands. Listen, like I said, we weren't catching a lot of fish. We were buying lobsters and fish from fishermen and in stores. We were definitely checking out restaurants. Our kitty, our budget for our 3 months down there was definitely being invested into the local community. We stayed in a few marinas. We bought fuel. We went to get drinks at various beach restaurants. You're not going to get that from us now. Because we're gonna be doing something else. So anyway, I think this is something to watch. Again, just to summarize, the costs have gone up pretty dramatically. I'm not sure what the strategy is there. It feels punitive to the cruiser, and maybe they just want the super yachts to come in. But I don't know. It seems to be just not a good situation for a cruising couple on a budget. And it's unfortunate because we only basically got to dip our toe in the water of the Bahamas and cruise around the Abacos this year. And we were planning to go to the Exumas on our next trip, but it just doesn't really seem to make a lot of sense unless our budget expands between now and then. So we'll see. I think we'll probably do the Keys over to the Yucatan and, try all that out. So anyway, that's kind of my thought on this whole Bahamian thing, and it'll be interesting to watch. So thanks for giving me a listen, and curious to hear what your thoughts are, particularly if you want to comment on what you think the impact is on vessels in transit to the Caribbean. I think that's really important. And how you feel about the fishing license too, and if you're kind of turned off by all this and looking to go somewhere else, where are you going and how are you getting there? So so with that, let's wrap it up, and thanks for tuning in.